Bet the Board.
What do you mean you don't bet? I mean, I don't bet. You know, I don't gamble. I don't. I never have, and I never will. Yeah, right. I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
It's the Bet the Board podcast.
God likes me. He really, really likes me.
In the end, I wound up right back where I started. I could still pick winners, and I could still make money for all kinds of people back home. And why mess up a good thing?
Here's Payne Insider and Todd Fuhrman.
Welcome into the Bet the Board podcast, NFL Week 13 Monday Night Football edition. I'm your host, Todd Fuhrman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider. Payne, another week of NFL football nearly in the books, kind sir.
Is this what hell feels like?
No. I feel like hell might feel a little bit better and provide slight warmth on our face and our ice-cold asses.
Ooh. Did you at least have a good Thanksgiving?
It was good to be with the kids and the family. I made a quick trip down to Phoenix for about 36 hours. Decided I needed to get back to do some heavy lifting over the weekend. And you know what? To quote the great Payne Insider, I can lose money betting football anywhere. And in retrospect, I probably would have been better served spending Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with the familia.
After the slow start last season, that was the move. I'm like, I got to get the fuck out of town. And went away, and that ended up being our best week of the season. So maybe that is in store soon.
The road trip may come a little too late in the game that we at least have on the docket. But when you think you've hit rock bottom, you invent ways in a variety of fashion. So that would be the easiest way to try and go about the ugly. But instead, we're going to try and take a Pollyanna approach for the good, the bad, and the ugly this week. And let's be the model of positivity, kind sir. The good that you saw so far this week, do you want to take the honors and the reins?
Well, I saw your list here, and there is a bad, but I was going to discuss some of the positive within that bad. So,
okay, let's do that then.
Do we want to? Well, it gets us off our schedule here, so to speak. Why don't we just talk about the Bills potentially last night? That might be the way to focus there. We want to start with Sunday Night Football?
We can start with Sunday Night Football, and the credit to the Bills, they wrap up the AFC East on December 1st, given the mediocrity they've surrounded themselves with, but that shouldn't detract from what we've seen from Buffalo. Buttoned up on the defensive side of the ball, it is clearly Josh Allen's team. They've committed to the ground game, and just a workmanlike effort, to say the least, in less than optimal offensive conditions, drubbing the 49ers 35-10. Josh Allen, a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, a passing touchdown. What could go wrong?
Rushing touchdown.
What could go wrong for the 49ers did, and San Francisco just looks like a dead man walking now, with the expectation that Christian McCaffrey will officially be lost for the season, adding him to the scrap heap along with some of the other key contributors for the 49ers on both the offensive and defensive side.
Hadn't really planned on talking about this game, but before we hit record, this was the last one we discussed a little bit, and so it made sense maybe to carry this over. This is the type of game that has you question your process as a bettor a little bit. Fair to say?
Yeah, there's a lot of those this season that have had me try and go back to the drawing board and decide if I want to throw the whole thing in the trash or 92% of what I'm doing.
Last night really wasn't close. The Bills were a net positive 19% success rate, net positive plus 0.56 EPA per play. And then once McDermott made the defensive adjustment and came out of the too high shell and went single high, the 49ers run game was taken away for the most part. When you have a great to elite team like the 49ers have been for the past few seasons, I think it's difficult for the market to catch up quick enough. And you kind of see that the last month. San Fran hasn't covered their last four. They haven't covered by an average of 13.25 points per game over that stretch. It's a team that's built, we've discussed this, on star power. There isn't a Trent Williams. There isn't an Ayuk. CMC was battling until he finally went down. Brock Purdy was clearly not comfortable making all the throws with his shoulder. That was a number I didn't see earlier in the week, but on game day was well into the 220s.
One prominent shop out here in the desert dipped as low as 207.5 before kickoff.
So that got sent to me at 228.5. I looked 12 minutes later, it was like 213. So if Brock can't make all the throws, suddenly it's difficult to get the ball to guys like Debo and Kittle. So it takes those two down the rung in terms of their capability, right? It's even though they're present, you almost have to pop into your model a 65% Debo, a 65% Kittle, right? Because you can't get the guy the balls. And then you have the 49ers defense ravaged with injuries to Bosa and Warner, and they're two of the very best at their positions, and this is the result. So it seems like the market has been slow to catch up, although as we look at this week, and it's probably on your list, we'll get to that in a little bit in regards to the 49ers. But overarching, the Bills look good. I shot Billy a note, I want to say about 10 days ago, and I said, just texted him basically, you guys have a chance. They have got all my favorite guys here. The Amari Cooper trade was that. I mean, that just pulls on the old heartstrings. And then you go out and get Keon, and Matt Milano's back, and everyone else has a deficiency
as well.
Yep, and everyone else has clear freaking holes. Like there are every single team. It's tough to see a hole here, and so Billy might be a happy man here.
Oh, we can see Billy right now on Bourbon Street.
This is a change of viewpoint from me here. We've loved the Bills, but we're just like, we need to squeeze the orange and get the juice out, and they haven't fully done that, but they're starting to. There's some things here. This has a real chance finally.
Do we want to sing the praises of the Washington Commanders, who bounced back even against a much maligned Tennessee Titans team, given the battle that we saw transpire in the market on Sunday?
What a weird week again. I mean, and we tried to disclose as much as we can and give the full picture, and I think that helps with some of these good, bad, and uglies on Monday. Very, and I mean very, sharp money on the Titans yesterday. Down 28-0 before you could even blink. The Titans did a nice job battling back late second quarter and throughout the third, but they were settling for threes instead of sevens, and so they just couldn't inch close enough. The most surprising part to this game for me was the Commanders' ability to run the ball. That was shocking. Titans came in 5th in schedule-adjusted rush efficiency. It's the one thing they could hang their hat on defensively all season. Somehow, Commanders finished 2nd this week with a 56% rushing success rate. It opened up things for Jayden Daniels, who was throwing on a Titan secondary down its top 2 cover corners. So I thought that was a huge confidence builder for Washington. Rightfully so. I think the most sophisticated football minds were starting to wonder on Washington if this was the time of year where Kingsbury hit his wall at the same time Jayden was hitting the rookie wall. Because from weeks 8 to 12, a 5-game stretch, the Commanders were playing at a below-average offensive level. They head into their bye, much needed. I'd think as you kind of span out a little bit, 3 of the 4 defenses Washington gets out of the bye they should have success against. Maybe you get Marshawn Lattimore defensively with that hamstring ready in time to face his old team. So there's some things here where Washington can make a push, where we were starting to wonder about that Kingsbury wall, that Jayden Daniels wall. And
Daniels, by virtue of his performance yesterday against the Tennessee Titans, goes from a short shot in the Offensive Rookie of the Year market now out to kind of that minus $3 territory. We'll see what Bo Nix can do tonight on Monday Night Football, if he can shorten that price, or if Jayden Daniels going into the bye finds himself with a comfortable margin. Other good Payne that you wanted to highlight?
Our boys got another win for us and our listeners there. The Seahawks out to 7, need one more. Defensively, it's starting to look good. And I think, we discussed what is the specific thing. And to me, it's multiple elements here. You have greater familiarity with a completely different scheme that Mike McDonald is running. We talk all the time offensively. Hey, this kind of takes 8-10 weeks to get going. Defensively here, it took a little bit longer. I think a lot of that was health. I mean, there has also been a massive boost in that area. There was a stretch towards the middle of the season where the entire starting defensive line missed that Lions game. And then you have McDonald tinkering with the roster. I mean, he's overhauled the linebacker room for a second time since he's been in Seattle.
Must have known what he was doing in that regard, because it seems to have taken a lot more effectively now.
Completely rebooted it in the offseason, right? He wanted guys that could cover, and boy, they could not stop the run once you had the defensive line injuries. And then again, once in season, you have the bye week, you start to reinstall the principles, you're coaching things up. It kind of goes back to camp off-season type vibe there during the bye. Last 3 weeks since the bye, Seattle's only allowed opposing offenses to register a successful play at 38% of the time. That's fourth best over that stretch. The run defense is no longer a complete sieve. It looks like Nwosu is getting really, really close, so another pass rusher on the way. The offense needs to get going a little bit here.
Geno can't hold on to the ball for 37 seconds every time he drops back to pass. I mean, if it's there, get rid of it.
Thinking you can hold it for that long with this offensive line is kind of the mind-boggling part to me.
I mean, you normally think that a quarterback's got a clock in his head. Apparently, Geno wants to sit there, have a picnic in the pocket.
And he's a really effective runner, too, right?
Yeah, he seemed reluctant to run the ball yesterday, something that he was doing a few weeks ago, and it was paying dividends when protection broke down around him and he was able to pick up 5 to 6 yards and stay ahead of the down and distance.
What else you got for us? Our guy?
I want to highlight a couple of individual performances. I know we've been a detractor of his for extended stretches, but when he starts to play above expectations, you do have to give him credit. And that would be Bryce Young in a loss, albeit against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it wasn't by any fault of his own. I mean, Bryce Young, 26 of 46, nearly 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of the passing and rushing variety, second most passing yards in a game in his career and most attempts in his game in his career. If it wasn't for a Chuba Hubbard fumble, we're talking about the Panthers winning again outright against a division rival as nearly a touchdown underdog. He was blitzed on 27 of his dropbacks by the Todd Bowles Buccaneers defense. What does Young do in those spots? 13 of 27, 160 yards. And against the blitz over the last 2 games, 24 of 41, nearly 300 yards, an NFL high 7.2 yards per attempt. So a hat tip to Bryce Young, taking the opportunity to get relegated to back up behind Andy Dalton. And coming into the year, we thought Dave Canales, who has been a quarterback whisperer in the past, could pay dividends. Clearly, Bryce Young has elevated his level of play. No, I know, not to the elite status by any stretch, but much better than what we saw. And on the flip side, a rookie who continues to emerge as a true RB1 in the Bucs offense, Bucky Irving, 25 for 152, a career high in rushes and rushing yards, first career 100-yard game. And this is a guy who's not going to get the Offensive Rookie of the Year, but his number has come crashing down from 150 to 1 to 50 to 1, and he is second amongst the skill position players right now, even ahead at some shops I saw of Malik Neighbors for what he can do, but still a long shot behind Brock Bowers and how he asserts himself as a tight end.
Talking Bryce Young first, I think if you are a Panthers fan, you should check out JT O'Sullivan, his QB film school. He captures the Bryce Young improvement better than either of us can do. And it's clear Bryce kind of took that time off to improve the mental side of his game. He's more decisive. He seems to have a better understanding of his offense, which makes sense, right? It's a brand new offense under Dave Canales, completely different. He seems to identify and understand what defenses are trying to do. He's playing freer. Now, there is still a cap on what Bryce Young can be because of the attributes, right? You watch him, he still has to throw from his tippy toes. But if Bryce continues playing like this, he's no longer a mistake by the organization. He is at least over the second half here of the restart process, right? I believe that started with the Broncos, and he's got 5 data points. You're looking at a quarterback that's somewhere like average to slightly below average, and in some categories above average. And that suddenly doesn't turn this into a mistake, and your hope is that he continues to grow in Dave Canales' system. And I think it's at least a positive. Now, Another team that maybe the market has not caught up to yet in terms of this improvement. 6.5 yesterday. Some places, couple places, close 7. It was scary in terms of the ability to potentially cover there for one moment in that game, but dead right side. I mean, the Panthers, much to our chagrin, probably should have won that game and helped our Buccaneers win total. In the adjusted box score, the Panthers were a 4-point winner outright, even though they blew that game. Bucky Irving, you mentioned, he's the only reason the Buccaneers won yesterday. He helped us in a lot of ways, other than the win total. But they don't have a prayer yesterday without Bucky Irving. And I think the staff needs to be smarter with his usage, right? Get the kid off special team. Shouldn't be returning meaningless kicks 5 seconds before the end of half. And then you remove your most efficient back after an injury timeout to a lineman because you think he needs a breather. I mean, he's a rookie. He's a young kid. He just got 2 minutes because the guy needed a breather. And on 2nd and goal from the 4, it's Mr. White twice, and you end up settling for a field goal.
Which almost cost him.
You mentioned the offensive rookie of the year market. We had focused, and I don't like bringing this stuff up, but there's been movement in this market because you can get like a relative 4 cents down. But Bucky was 25-1 to be the rookie with the most rushing yards. Jayden Daniels was the odds-on favorite before the season. Bucky has pulled ahead by about 140 yards, and Tampa has 5 games remaining. Washington just 4 since they're on the bye this week. So that is one market where it seems where Bucky might edge out Jayden Daniels.
Definitely has the opportunity to get the job done there. There is no doubt about it. So we'll see exactly what Tampa can do. And for those folks checking the odds to win the NFC South, the Bucs over the last couple weeks have gone from a 4-1 underdog right now in a flat-footed tie at some shops with the Atlanta Falcons here on a Monday morning. There's no doubt about that. From any other good you wanted to get to before we go to the bad?
That was the bad. Not capitalizing on that because we talked about the schedule.
We did.
And it is an absolute cupcake schedule. We've been talking about that for a couple of weeks, so that is an abject disaster.
Yes, it is much more favorable for them, and Atlanta will have their hands full again this weekend as a 4.5, 5-point underdog against the Minnesota Vikings. So many different ways we can go in the bad, Payne, so...
might as well rip the bit. So,
the world's your oyster.
No. So I saw the outline this morning, and I'll just kind of capture this. As a pro bettor, it's basically bet and forget. But then you do have to reassess and see if was it a good bet, was it a bad bet. You go through the adjusted box score process. And I wasn't mentally ready first thing in this morning when I saw this come across for these two games. So our listeners don't know this, but some of them do. Whew. Well, first of all, you were the one that put these on the list. Why don't you introduce this?
You want to attack the Atlanta Falcons first?
Yeah, go for that.
All right, we'll rip the Band-Aid off with the Atlanta Falcons. And the reality of it is, for the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins, 4 interceptions, including one of the most head-scratching picks you'll ever see from a veteran quarterback with the game still hanging in the balance. 0 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions during the Falcons' 3-game losing streak. Yesterday was his first ever career game with 4 picks and no touchdown passes. Payne, is it time to see Michael Penix under center? Because Cousins ain't that dude right now.
They're going to at least give him a chance to get some revenge on his old team here coming up this week. But overarching the Falcons on Sunday, those are the types of games that in the moment a sports bettor can lose their mind. You identify the matchup. The situation is really good. You beat the closing line. You put yourself on the right side, and then you come up short. And I think if you're a casual fan who likes to look at box scores just to see what happens, on Monday morning or after the game, even the generic stats depict this, right? I mean, 350 yards for the Falcons offense, Chargers 187, 24-10 first down advantage for the Falcons. You go into the more
1 first down for the Chargers after the break.
You even dig into the more telling metrics, right? Falcons had a net positive 24% passing success rate. Net positive 0.18 EPA per rush. Scoreboard reads 13-7 Chargers. Adjusted box score reads 20-11 Falcons. Now, to your specific bad here in Kirk Cousins. Not great. I mean, 13 full rest days, which you would think is huge for a guy his age, a guy that was struggling just a little bit prior to the bye. From the onset, it looked... The obvious thing is to blame kickers, right? Because Koo will take the blame.
We'll get there. We'll get there to blame kickers shortly.
Yeah.
Don't you worry about that.
Yeah. Koo, he's going to take the blame, but Cousins misses Mooney for a walk-in touchdown on the opening drive, throws it behind him. Mooney almost makes the catch to get you the first down and to reset to first and goal. But he hits Mooney in stride. Mooney's walking right into the end zone. Then you get a backup fifth-round rookie with the pick six when the Falcons are in the green zone. Cousins throws late outside rather than finding a wide-open receiver on the in-cut past the sticks. Even if Cousins completes that ball, the receiver's a yard short of the stick. So just one of the few times as you're watching this where Cousins feels good under pressure. He steps up into the pocket, and you see him gently float this ball to the end zone. You're thinking a Falcons receiver is wide open. He's just basically trying to hand him the ball. Camera finally pans to the end zone. It's just like a sea of Chargers defenders. One of those maddening great bets that loses, and you're just like, what can go wrong this season just continues to.
Other bad that you wanted to touch on?
Well, you threw the other one up here. Might as well fucking rip that one off, too.
I wasn't sure if this should be bad or ugly because we talk about blaming kickers, and this is one where I think an AFC...
You kind of let us there with kickers.
Yeah, an AFC contender really has to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out how they're going to work through this. And you saw Coach Harbaugh go over to his kicker that should be and will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer in Justin Tucker. You can't even be mad. I mean, the guy just seems to have gotten a case of the yips, whether it's Chuck Knobloch-esque at second base, whether it's like a golfer who just can't find the fairway. I mean, Justin Tucker by the numbers right now. 2 for 4 in field goals yesterday, 1 of 2 on his extra points. First game in his college or pro career with 3 missed kicks. He's 19 of 27 on field goals this season, the most missed field goals in a season in his career, and the highest leverage games still to come. 9 of 16 on field goals and losses this year, 2 of 7 from 50 yards, and it becomes a misadventure every time he's out there, even on the stuff that was guaranteed. I mean, where this was a guy, you could put him in at 55 plus, and it was just a question of how high between the uprights he was going to put the ball in a narrow window. But right now, the Ravens special teams, especially in the place kicking game, has let them down and clearly played a role in their unfortunate demise at the hands of the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday.
So like you, traveled a little bit. This game to me is... Kickers are so easy to blame. This to me was one of the weirdest games to assess of the entire week.
That's a fair point. I'll give you that for sure.
Baltimore comes out with their hair on fire. Defensively, they forced punts on the Eagles' first 4 possessions. Offensively, the Ravens marched down the field on their opening 2 drives. They settle for a field goal on the opening drive after 1st and 10 from the 17. Come back with the 8-play, 82-yard touchdown where Tucker misses the PAT. So, yes, you're like, oh, here we fucking go. Instead of 10-0, it's only 9. And to me, the largest turning point of the entire game, Eagles go 3 and out. Ravens get the ball back. Todd Monken dials up the best play call of the entire game on first down. It's first down play action to Isaiah Likely on a deep crosser. There is not an Eagles defender within 25 yards of Likely, and the ones closest, if you look at the Madden view that the TV production crew gave you, all of the closest defenders within 25 yards are running in the opposite direction. Lamar just flat out misses Likely and a chance to go up 16 or 18-0. And the game's, I don't want to say this, but probably over at that point. And so from that point forward, Lamar Jackson was miserable. He was beating himself up after the throw. He came off to the sideline, was hitting himself in the head, missing that throw. And from that point forward, he was horrendous navigating the pocket. He refused to step up into it, was constantly fading into pressure left and right. Eagles had 2 short field touchdowns before the half that swung all of the momentum. And at 9-0, I'm like, once he misses that throw, I'm like, we're cooked here. This just does not feel good. Somehow the Ravens regroup at the break. They make adjustments. 0 points on trips to the Eagles 15. 0 points on a trip to the Eagles 35. And I know, right, we're going to get back to Justin Tucker missing kicks. You got to finish those drives. This is like the most historic offense of all time, and we're sitting here. Henry has an advantage. I understand he hasn't broken a long one, but he's averaging over 4 yards a carry. Lamar's not using his legs. We've gone to like the quick drop back game where it's hot potatoing it 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage or 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage every single down. It was just terrible. The Eagles literally had 1 drive in the second half. They got 7 on it. And I know the Eagles defense has improved under Vic Fangio. The young kids are flying around. But when you're talking about a historically good offense, coming away with 0 points on 2 drives out of the half, settling for 3 to open the game, you see why those that continue to be Lamar detractors have a tiny leg left to stand on. Because in the biggest games, it is far from great. Now, it'll look fine in a get-right game here against the Giants defense this week, and everyone will forget about it.
They get a chance to regroup before they get the much more.
Yeah, okay, so they bye this week, then the Giants. And then you have the Steelers at home and a game that you're searching for revenge. Hopefully Todd Monken can get what the Steelers are going to do to Lamar figured out. He couldn't in the first matchup. But there's some head-scratching things that really transpire in these big Ravens games that just leave you like, what's going on here? And this was one of those.
Somewhere along the way, you got to push it across the finish line. The Steelers take care of business against the Cincinnati Bengals, and here Baltimore is potentially needing to go on the road throughout the duration of the AFC playoffs after we thought they were going to have a chance to push Kansas City and at worst be the AFC North champions. So something that the Ravens will have to do a little soul searching before they come back for their final 4 games of the season. And Payne, this will be the last time we talk about this team on the podcast in really any capacity. So I want to take shots at them one final time. Being the New York Jets, they take money every single week in the betting market. I think they've taken big money, feels like 2 months straight. And during that span, they've gone 1-7 against the number. The lone cover coming against the Houston Texans on Halloween. But Aaron Rodgers blows his first ever 14-plus point lead in a true home game in his illustrious career. Had been 75-0. In that role previously. The loss clinches the Jets' 9th straight losing season, extending the longest active drought in the NFL. And kudos to the Jets, the cherry on top. They've now lost to 2 of their former quarterbacks in Geno Smith and Sam Darnold along the way. When you think it can't get worse for the Jets and they get all of the special teams breaks, short fields, and turnovers in the first half, it's still not good enough for this team to get it across the finish line, mustering a grand total of 0 points after the break.
I mean, you could have just put this in your group chats with all your Jets buddies because it's been done and over with for a while. And
not according to the Jets, Payne. They were going to have one chance to rally the troops and try and run the table, is what Aaron Rodgers was saying.
This week?
No, going into the Seahawks game.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I mean, we fortunately got their rally there against the Texans, and you thought it would continue. And,
we did go back to that the following week against the Cardinals.
It ended abruptly. Yeah, it was short-lived. It was one Thursday night. When you can't win games with 27-yard touchdown drives and kickoff returns, it's pretty scary. And don't usually talk about this too much, but that was a match between 2 groups, one in New York, one in Chicago, who just could not quit the Jets again this week. So from peak to peak, Jets plus 2.5 to Jets close of -2. I know what the scoreboard said with the Jets up big early on in that game. It was not reality. Seahawks were a net positive 10% in success rate, net positive plus 0.33 EPA per play. If you had the under in that game, I feel for you, because that was a right side more in line with about 34 points being scored in that game than what the final was.
Hopefully you went
for the Jets.
Hopefully you went full degen if you had the under in the game and you doubled down at the break.
For the Jets organization and fans, I mean, I think the loss Sunday is a positive. You just have to start planning for the future. Get the best draft pick you can. There is 30-plus guys with expiring deals on this roster, so there's lots of work to be done, and to me, that's more off-season than the last handful of games this season.
Any other bad that you wanted to get to before we go to the ugly?
Let's just go straight to the ugly.
All right. In this game, look, we could have gone one of two ways here. If we were glass half full, we'd be giving kudos in the ugly to the Steelers and what they were able to do offensively, with Russell Wilson throwing for 400 yards and Pittsburgh doing what they wanted when they wanted, with the tight ends, getting players involved that normally aren't key cogs as far as their offensive game plan, their ability to run the football. But because we like to pile on the Cincinnati Bengals, we're going to go with the Bengals defense in the ugly. And it's historically bad, Payne. Most points per game for a team in losses at 27.8 in a season by any team all time with a minimum of 5 losses. Most points for a franchise in a 3-game losing streak, 99 for the Bengals by any team since 1970. 2 losses for the Bengals this year when they scored 38-plus points. It's tied for the most in NFL history. 3 losses with 34-plus points this season, tied for the most in NFL history. 4 losses with 33-plus points scored this season, most in NFL history. And 6 losses with 25-plus points this season, tied for the most in NFL history. This Bengals defense is something, my friend. And for all those nice things we said about Lou Anarumo and the adjustments he made after the break a couple seasons ago, the bottom has officially fallen out through a variety of injuries and ineptitude, making this an extremely frustrating season, I'd imagine, for Bengals fans who thought the offense deserved more.
You kind of took my mind in a completely different direction. But usually, it can take some time, but when the dust eventually settles, the opinions end up being pretty good. I was not a Lou Anarumo guy, and then I came around. And now I'm questioning that, because he's gone from the hot coordinator getting job interviews for head coach to hot seat. It's going to be interesting to see if they bring Lou back. And I thought Joe Burrow's post-game comments about seeing what players the team, the organization are made out of down the stretch was telling. There was some insinuation guys were not giving full effort. And Joe Burrow kind of, I want to say pounded the table, but insinuated that we're going to find out what these guys are made out of when the games are meaningless down the stretch here. And Cincinnati came into this game against the Steelers 26th in schedule-adjusted defensive efficiency. It was trending worse, 30th in overall EPA per play and success rate allowed. I think your point is clear, right? The Bengals at this point can't stop the run or the pass. You're going to have some contracts coming up to where you wonder if you can allocate funds to fully fix the defense.
There, Payne, yesterday watching that game, there looked to be stretches where the Bengals were playing with 9 defenders. That's how wide open some of those Steelers receivers were.
It's bad. And Chase wants to get paid, right? Trey Hendrickson wants to get paid. It's going to be interesting. I think there is some positive here, and that's kind of what I was hinting at the top, and you caught that and led us the right way. Russell Wilson probably should have found himself in the good section this week, I would think. 67% drop-back success rate. That was number 1 on the week, 8% better than anyone else, 8% better than Jayden Daniels, who was number 2. Russell Wilson, number 2 in EPA plus completion rate over expectation. Russ was cooking. Art Smith, good for him. Fantastic game plan, fantastic play calling, great execution, lots of heavy personnel, something the Bengals have struggled against. Pat Freiermuth off the milk carton, domination. Austin in the slot. This is one where we were much higher on Pittsburgh coming into the season.
I didn't think they could win the damn division, though.
I didn't either, but we were very close Very close to going over. We just respected so many people on this under, and I just refused tying my money up, given interest-free loans for 5-6 months on battles. So we decided not to. What's the next ugly? I see here on the list. It feels like you're trying to get at me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to do. But
you got you got losing bets. You got
I got one final question on the Bengals, though, and I mean, we can address this later. If you're the Bengals and you're assessing your roster, you've seen what's transpired in Buffalo with your franchise quarterback and electing to spend money elsewhere than at the receiver position. Is there a scenario where the Bengals go, you know what, Joe Burrow's the guy, and we don't need to spend an arm and a leg on an elite wide receiver because he's going to make anybody around him better, and we need to invest in the offensive line to keep him healthy, and we need to bring in players on the defensive side?
They have?
Yeah, I know. The offensive line hasn't
can you invest in the damn offensive line?
It just hasn't played out the way that they drew it up.
Every freaking offseason. I mean, the last couple off seasons, right? It's upgrading Garden Center, and then it's going out and getting Orlando Brown, and it's going out and drafting. They thought they solved the right tackle position. I don't know. The difference with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen is I understand that Joe Burrow can navigate the pocket and run. Josh Allen's a different animal when it comes to being able to create with his legs, and I don't think Josh Allen has zero weapons. He's got some weapons.
Yeah, but they're not paying
He's got Amari Cooper. They went out right. Well, they weren't paying these guys either. This is what we talk about when you kind of hit these. You hit these marks. Now, like the conversation between like keeping Diggs and keeping Jamar Chase are on two different planets. Because, Jamar Chase is in his prime and exponentially better. It's easy to walk away from Diggs, especially when there's some troubles brewing there between quarterback and wide receiver.
Correct.
That are not present with Chase and Burrow.
Shout out to Josh for settling down.
You know what? Billy sent me that. He was like, hey, this is like a year ago. They started dating. And I'm like, man, it doesn't do it for me. She went through a little makeover. I don't know if Josh was like, hey, let's get a little more presentable here. I mean, if I'm going to commit to this thing full on. But she's had the glow up, as the kids say these days.
I mean, Western New York, it's a different standard in Western New York versus the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, she's improved. Her power rating, let's call it, has improved exponentially. So good for Josh.
Right, we'll figure out how to remake the Bengals roster, I guess, at a later date. But it does beg interesting questions.
T. Higgins is gone.
Yes, Higgins is 100% gone.
Okay.
I mean, unless you get
if
Higgins
Burton
on a
can get in the playbook
deal, and then you
no. Someone's going to pay him wide receiver one.
Trade Jamar Chase, keep Higgins on a cheaper deal.
He's still's got the. That's not going to happen. Okay, let's move on. We're off the rails.
I'm taking shots at your Chiefs. We've gone long for the good, bad, and the ugly this week. I'm taking shots at your Chiefs not because they won 19-17 and continue to win games, but they failed to cover a spread in their 6th straight game. It's the longest streak under Andy Reid. 9th win of the season by 7 or fewer points, most through 12 games in NFL history, and they have the worst point differential, Payne plus 54 by any team starting 11-1 or better in NFL history. The reason I bring this up, and they're not constructed the same way, these are a lot of the same discussions we were having about this time last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. Eventually, the floor fell out for Philly. This is a much more buttoned-up organization in the locker room, but you begin to wonder and have some concerns. Can the Chiefs continue to dance between the raindrops when the opponents start to get ratcheted up in strength of schedule? And again, we'll get to a look-ahead number that we'll see on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, there's some competition down the stretch, right? The Chargers, TBD on what they are. Obviously much improved, much more buttoned up. Let's see if McConkey can get back to health. But specific to the Chiefs, I think
Chiefs taking money.
There's a lot going on here. Yeah. Boy, McConkey was battling. Let's put it that way. He came into that game with a little bit of a...
Yeah, that shoulder was a mess, and then the knee was a mess. So, dude's held together by a variety of stuff.
Yeah, that was part of the Falcon stuff, because there's really not much past him. The Chiefs specifically, I don't want to say they're going through the motions, but it's a combination of going through the motions, having holes. I mean, the nucleus of this staff and roster have played a ton of football the last handful of games to where there isn't a need to be all gas, no brake. You know what I'm saying? But there are deficiencies here. This roster has more holes than last season. Left tackle is a problem. Cornerback number 2 is an issue. Joe Tooney had to be kicked from guard to left tackle because Wanya Morris is unplayable. Now, I understand Wanya is battling through a knee injury of his own, but 15% pressure rate allowed on pass block snaps on Friday. Veach believes he's solved the issue at left tackle with DJ Humphries, former first-round pick. He's 30 years old. He's a vet that still has enough juice, made a Pro Bowl in 2021. Cardinals were going through a youth movement, and Humphries had torn his ACL last December, so he basically was just kind of cast away. They let him go. He was medically cleared on November 22nd. This will be, or should be, a significant upgrade at left tackle. At what point do they implement DJ Humphries? You'd figure you want a couple games of him getting up to speed, getting acclimated. It's not going to be perfect game one, right? He's got to get back up to game speed, feel confident in the knee. Cornerback, you need Joshua Williams to play like he did at the end of last season. He actually played well on Friday. You need Trent McDuffie to return to form. I think you have to realize Chamari Connor is more safety than slot corner. You likely need to address this issue in free agency. Now, the 2 leading candidates come with some issues, right? Xavier Howard, some stuff going on off the field there. He declined to accept the Bengals contract. Marcus Peters is still out there. We understand how he left the Chiefs organization. I don't know if they would go back to him. Maybe you kick the tires on a young kid who was drafted in the first round in Emmanuel Forbes. But if you go get Xavier and Joshua Williams returns to his late season form and McDuffie gets back on track, things start to look better here. We also saw Hollywood Brown. My understanding is he's going to get ramped up into full practices in the next 10 to 14 days with an attempt to play on Christmas Day. That's kind of what's going on here in my understanding of things.
Yeah, that makes a world of sense. I just had to take shots because despite having the gaudy record, they have let people down at the betting window. So it's not often I get to put the Chiefs in the bad or the ugly. So when I get the opportunity to do so, Payne, I'm going to take advantage.
They escaped. I mean, if you had the Chiefs in Survivor contests,
I'm still not sure what
got fortunate
I'm still
there.
not sure what that penalty was called. In real time, it looked like a false start, an illegal snap, and who the hell knows what exactly went down there. But if it can happen to the Raiders, I know Raider fans were a little bit irate, but they should be thrilled. Your team showed fight, you were competitive, and you lost another game to set up where you want to be in the draft to be able to potentially get your franchise quarterback.
Yeah. Hopefully a new head coach here, too, as well.
Well, you bring Antonio Pierce back, you reap what you sow in this racket, so we'll see.
Absolutely.
Exactly how it goes. You can follow Payne on social media at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there. Most importantly, be sure to follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. And Payne, look ahead numbers. Rapid fire on some of these games. The Detroit Lions on Thursday night against the Green Bay Packers, a game we'll preview in greater detail. Lions were a 6-point favorite, number down to 3.5 as Detroit tries to figure out if they're going to be down 13 starters on the defensive side of the ball or more than that on their 2 deep.
There you go. That's the gist of this game is Detroit's defensive injuries. They're plucking some veterans off some practice squads to fill in here. This was the game where Jordan Love last Thanksgiving came alive along with the rest of that Packers offense. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled on Jair Alexander here. This is going to get to a point, though.
Yeah, we're getting there right now. We're getting a soft 3.5
I didn't really want to address it, but there are certainly different vibes surrounding Green Bay and what they are. And I think we discussed it I think you asked me like a week or two ago. Like Detroit's potential peak is Super Bowl worthy. It's the consistency that's the problem. And you go back to Thanksgiving Thursday night, and you look at the scoreboard and it says one thing, and you'll parade around and call it weather. Tua lit these guys up. I mean, completed nearly 81% of his passes. Back-to-back plays, a fumble goes in your direction, right? Is it a Jordan Love fumble? 50-50. The next play, they punt it away. It's a muffed punt. It's a free touchdown. The adjusted box score was Green Bay 24, Miami 23. And so you're going to get, as you correlate that to this game, at some point here, I would think there is going to be Detroit money showing up off this type of movement, but we'll see.
Yeah,
see what unfolds.
You would anticipate that. Modest move here. Vikings 3.5 to 4.5 for the Kirk Cousins revenge game as Atlanta continues to take on water. Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars. This game has had a ton of movement. Titans 3 on a look-ahead number, got as high as 6. Bettors decided, you know what, Max Jones is a downgrade, but it's still the Tennessee Titans laying more than a field goal. We're now in that 3.5 range across the board. 49ers 6. When I put the notes together for our show, it was 4.5. It's now 3.5. Against the Chicago Bears. And then the aforementioned Sunday Night Football game, the Chiefs were 5.5 on a look-ahead number, got as low as 3.5, but it's Kansas City taking a little bit of money from 3.5 out to 4. We'll touch on the Chiefs and Chargers game, of course, on Thursday in greater detail, so no need to touch on that one. Wasn't sure if any of the other 3 were worth mentioning, or we can move forward from there into a quick breakdown of Browns and Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk Chargers, Chiefs, Sunday Night Football, but I think that's going to be an interesting game to dissect because, as you pointed out, right, Kansas City is just sneaking by. This isn't a team you truly want to lay points with, but this is a different conversation when you're sitting there at like 3-20 versus laying nearly 2 touchdowns where you don't need to get margin. And I think the Chargers, to some perspective that we've discussed, right, they are vastly improved. They are well more buttoned up. Jesse Minter has been fantastic on the defensive side of the ball. But to your point, it's a fraudulent win against Atlanta. You got some questions with some injuries there to key cogs. And so can you fully attack the Chiefs where you need to attack them right now if Ladd McConkey is not 100%?
The Quentin Johnston, Joshua Palmer show on Sunday Night Football.
And it's possible, right? They've been in this matchup before. We've seen Palmer have some success in this matchup. Maybe he becomes the guy, but that's kind of what's happening here. Is the thought process that maybe this number potentially came a little short. But to your point, like the line to me, when you read the line, like ooh, that was kind of telling at 3.5. 3.25. It's like oof. I think you and I initially were saying, hey. Let's see if we can make a case here for the Chargers. But then you kind of watch how things played out last week. You watch how things unfolded against maybe a team in this tier in Baltimore, right? Kind of, spot the Chargers a big lead and not be able to not be able to hold on to that lead. And now you're stepping into a team in Arrowhead against the Chiefs who are in that class. And so maybe that's the thought process here. I will probably figure out who's on it here once we get off this podcast.
Makes plenty of sense. The final game...
Bears, what was the other one? Bears 49ers. That one seems obvious, right?
It's to figure out what the 49ers actually have at their disposal, and maybe Brock Purdy missing this week.
Plus the conversation that at least, we're not huge trend guys, but the trends at least make sense and back up coach being fired. Right, you get that.
They showed fight last week against the Lions as well. I mean, they could have easily quit. I mean, the first half was ugly, but they were out there fighting tooth and nail in the second half.
See, these are the games that are always difficult to assess because if the Lions are scoring touchdowns there, that game's over before it even starts. And then, the Bears come in and cover the game, and you look at the final score and like, easy game. But, I mean, the Lions could have put that game away early, but you're right. You like the fight that you saw. And then obviously, Eberflus gets canned, and there's some trends there that suggest, hey, and then the travel situation, right? I know the game's in San Francisco, but the Bears, didn't have much travel there going from Chicago to Detroit. San Francisco's making the trek from the West Coast up to Orchard Park back to San Francisco. So even though they're the home team, certainly more travel for the 49ers.
On the heels of traveling across multiple time zones the week before against the Green Bay Packers and playing in inclement weather. So this was the part of the schedule that, we didn't even need to get to be able to cash our regular season wins under with the 49ers, but realized how difficult it was going to get late in the campaign. And we'll see how things look now for a team that's beaten and battered. I guess still in the race in the NFC West if things break the right way, but you begin to wonder for a team that prides itself on getting to conference championships and winning the Super Bowl, what they'll have left in the tank if they don't have all the cards in their deck to be able to cross the finish line. Browns-Broncos paying the final game of Week 13, and as we sit here on a Monday morning, Denver now leaking out to 6.5. At a very prominent offshore shop. Total on this game, 42 up a touch from where it opened in that 40.5, 41 range. Cleveland Browns this year, 2-1 against the division. Good on paper. 1-7 against everyone else in the league. Denver Broncos, 6-0 versus teams that come into the game at 500 or below. 1-5 versus teams with a winning record. Denver poised to end one of the longest droughts in the league in terms of postseason, looking for their first playoff berth since the 2015 season when they won the Super Bowl. The Browns, they have rest working in their favor, one of the longest possible rest time without having a bye week, going from playing on a Thursday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers in inclement weather to now turning around and playing on Monday night. Teams in that particular spot, a decent ATS result, 21-13-3 against the number. The interesting trend, 25-12 to the under in a 37-game sample size there. Monday night, it has been home to the primetime over so far this season, a far cry from what we've seen unfold on both Thursday nights and Sunday nights. Injury-wise for the Cleveland Browns, no Cedric Tillman, no Juan Thornhill, no Jedrick Wills. On the other side for the Denver Broncos, the most notable injury there, Riley Moss, in the defensive backfield, expected to miss. War of words between Jerry Jeudy and his former team, but it's felt like a sign of mutual respect with Patrick Surtain. Payne Bo Nix protecting the football, clearly grasping what Sean Payton wants him to do. It is diametrically opposed to the Jameis Winston experience where he's going to come up with some big plays and he's going to come up with some head-scratching throws. But what's the one or two matchups that you're most interested to see unfold tonight that you think can dictate who gets to the window, whether it's side or total?
It's pressure for both quarterbacks. I think the one that jumps off the page is certainly Bo Nix, and he's improving. And you see Sean Payton has simplified the offense. He's incorporating more things that Bo's skill set can actually go out there and achieve, right? This is interesting, right? And this is how it probably should be. So don't take this as like a dig if you're a Denver fan. There isn't anything Sean Payton won't do to help make Bo Nix look as good as humanly possible, because this was his bang the table, going out in the limb pick, right? Payton has attached himself to Bo. And I think we've broken down a few Denver games this season. Bo has obviously been involved in our good, bad, and ugly segments multiple times as well. One thing we've touched on each of these discussions that we've had is Bo Nix to this point is opponent dependent. There is some variance with that opponent tonight, though. You never are fully sure which version of the Browns you're going to get in a lost season. Cleveland has played to its peak against the division rivals in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and then they appeared to care very little against the Chargers and the Saints late. If you were getting a full-on Browns effort, and you would hope that maybe the spotlight here, Monday Night Football, with all eyes on them watching, dictates a full-blown effort here, but one of those elements that truly impacts Bo Nix is pressure. Cleveland has been fantastic getting it, right? They're fourth in pass rush win rate, number one in overall pressure. Bo Nix has graded out QB 38 of 41 qualifiers when pressured. The adjusted accuracy dips 25%. The splits are just so dramatic. The delta is so large that if you look at Bo Nix' entire picture, when he's kept clean, he's an above average NFL quarterback. When he's pressured, it's like we might have made a mistake drafting Bo Nix level bad. So that's what you have to figure out tonight. Bo Nix, for as mobile as he is, tends to panic if there's pressure. 4-1 turnover worthy play rate to big time throw rate when pressured. 12-3 big time throw rate to turnover worthy play rate when he's kept clean. The pressure is kind of like what's on Bo's mind first, right? And it's suddenly not the easy read that Sean gives him in the play design and call when pressure comes. I think if you're looking at Bo Nix tonight, there's two things he has to do. He's got to hike up the scramble rate to beat the Browns' pressure, beat the Browns with his legs, and on plays where his offensive line does keep him clean, I think Bo has to make the Browns' defense pay with explosives. Cleveland has had trouble with blown coverages and giving up explosive plays. Dead last in the NFL in yards allowed per completed pass. So they don't allow a ton of completions, but when they do, they are impactful. They're game-changing. So it's one of those things where if Bo can just, hey, pressure's coming, okay, let's take the sack, don't put it in harm's way. Okay, pressure's coming, let's evade this with our legs, pick up 7 or 8, put our offense in a great down and distance for Sean to get me a great play coming up next. And then when you do get that pressure, 1, 2, maybe 3 times, you got to make Cleveland pay downfield. You flip it around to the other side, it's a similar situation. Broncos, 3rd in pass rush win rate. The Browns have massive issues at left tackle, as you mentioned. Jameis has graded out QB 37 out of 41 qualifiers when under pressure. And Todd, this is why the total on the surface, when you're looking at 41, which is key numbers, like you would have expected a lot of over money to come in. It's kind of just been like a trickle. And based upon how these teams have been treated in market, you know, I understand you had the snow globe game last Thursday night, and that created a move on the look-ahead line from as high as like 42.5 down to 38.5 on that Monday. And, you know, the weather looked terrible. But once we got down to 35.5 and it didn't look as terrible, we saw some really sophisticated over money in that Thursday night game. We have seen some over money in these games with Jameis Winston inserted. Certainly the Broncos offense, when they are facing opponents like they have the last couple of weeks, that make it a little bit easier for Bo Nix. So you would have thought that combination would have led to like a massive buy order coming in on the over here. It just hasn't happened because of these two quarterbacks and likely to what they're faced tonight here in pressure.
What do you make overall of the Broncos defense? Have you been pleasantly surprised by what we've seen from this collective group? We knew Patrick Surtain was an absolute star in the back. I mean, he grades out as one of the top cover corners in the entire league, and rightfully so. But you're getting performances from a Nick Bonito and his ability to generate pressure. Zach Allen missed last week against the Raiders, but guys are generating pressure and quarterback hits from some unexpected positions along the defensive line.
I think you've asked me this question a couple times now. And if you go back to our season preview, I was a little higher on the Broncos defense than market. And there was a lot of these guys, Nick Bonito specifically, a couple other guys, are looking for new deals along that front.
Contract years, the best motivator there is in this business.
And we've also seen Vance hike up his rate of blitzes this season with some comfort in the back end. You also have to think about some of the teams they've played. Again, the defense, I think, can be had in certain situations. I mean, the Raiders moved the ball a little bit last week. The Falcons were not able to, but it's been, the Ravens go out there and throw up a crooked number. You had Bryce Young, you had a beat up Saints offense. There's been some schedule things here that have certainly aided this defense. The Jets in a torrential downpour. So I think the defense has made the strides we expected. Do I think they're the 4th best defense in the league, like some of the metrics indicate? Probably not that good.
That felt aggressive.
We kind of, we banged the table for improvement here. We've gotten it. The pressure, there's a lot of these young guys up front. They're like, hey, this looks like this guy made surge here. This looks like this guy has a chance here. And then the telling thing to me, and I go back to this, and I think I either said it privately or publicly, is like when you had the inter squad scrimmages, and all I was reading during that Packers week was this defense is just absolutely torching the shit out of the Packers offense. It the full light came on. I was like, oh shit, maybe we got to pay attention here. This was another one at the bell that we were contemplating going over 5.5, didn't, and now kicking ourselves in the ass for it. So defense improved. Do I think they're the 4th best defense in the league? No.
Fair way to caveat it to try and put a bow on this particular breakdown, but we're not done. with the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos. To be able to give you something actionable tonight, we bring in our in-house prop expert, Billy, to share his perspective on a player that you can target in the derivative market.
Good morning or afternoon, Bet the Board listeners, depending on when you're listening to the show. Got one prop for tonight in the Denver-Cleveland game. We're going to go Devon Vele, or Vele. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Over 35.5 receiving yards. I would play this to 37.5 minus 120. Do not go past that number. I'll speak about another route I went as well in case it gets away. But let's just start with the breakdown here. So Vele's emerged as the clear number 2 in this offense behind Courtland Sutton off of his Week 12 game against the Raiders in which he had 80 yards on 6 receptions. Sean Payne had this to say. He said, Vele's doing good. Very quickly we've seen his growth, so he's really good. The strengths for him certainly are his hands. You guys saw it in camp. He has strong hands in traffic. He's a guy that plays well over the middle. He reminds me a lot of former Saints wide receiver Marquise Colston, who I had in New Orleans for 10 or 11 years. In our staff meeting 20 minutes ago, I said, we have to continue to find touches for him. You have a big target. I mentioned this to you guys. He's 6'4", but he's a short inseam. He's someone who can get in and out of his cuts. So, obviously Peyton tends to fall in love with certain guys, and he loves comparing them to former players. We saw him do it with Bo Nix. He's fallen in love with Taysom Hill, and I'm kind of getting the same feeling he's fallen in love with Devon Vele. And I can't blame him. If you look at Vele, his catch rate over expected is 8.6%, which is 19th out of all wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs in the NFL. It's very good. He's run 24-plus routes in each of the last 3 games. He's clearly edging out Troy Franklin and Little Jordan Humphreys as the number 2 route runner on this team. Josh Reynolds may or may not come back. He's still dealing with that finger issue. That doesn't concern me one bit in terms of Vele's production. He's got Nix back there, and Nix has got the ability to scramble, extend plays. It's obviously a key factor for Vele having success, kind of sitting down and finding spots when Nix gets out of the pocket. And when we look at the matchup, for all the talent Cleveland has on this defense, there are just far too many times where there seems to be secondary busts or miscommunications causing big plays. Cleveland's 27th in the NFL in yards after catch over expected allowed, and they're 28th in EPA per pass play allowed on deep throws 20-plus yards. Denver's first in pass block win rate, and if you look at across various different metrics that analyze pass blocking, Denver really does rank number 1 overall. So even though they're going up against Myles Garrett tonight, we're talking about the best pass blocking offensive line in the league against a secondary who tends to give up the big play, can be undisciplined at times. I mentioned another avenue that we looked at in this game. We also we kind of split the position. We played the bigger position was on over 35.5 receiving yards, but we also played his over 15.5 long reception. I would play that to 16.5. That's a smaller position. I'm not saying that that's the best bet, but let's say this number gets away from us overall for his receiving yards. Maybe you can make a smaller play in the long reception. So we like Devon Vele over 35.5 receiving yards. Let's hope we get some better luck than the past couple weeks. We had the Will Disley one right away, killed us, 18-yarder. I think I kind of manifested that on the pod. I said, he might, we could lose. He could catch a seam right down the middle, which he did. Previous week, C.J. Stroud, it depended on the number you got, whether you won or lost there. So hopefully this one clears easily, and we sit back. We got a rocking chair winner. All right, guys, best of luck.
Selfishly, Payne, I hope that Devon Vele gets 100 yards receiving and that Courtland Sutton ends up with a giant goose egg if I can have my wish for the way Monday Night Football unfold.
There you go. I'm also your little lead in there to Billy. You went to Arizona. You came back a poet there. What did you say?
I don't even remember what I said. I black out when I do these things.
It was a rhyme.
I was completely unintentional. Don't give me too much credit then if I provided alliteration or anything along those lines. Poetry is not in my wheelhouse. Although the way I've picked games this season, maybe I need to pivot into a career change. So
That's what I'm told. In between the death threats, that's a career change there for you.
Well,
and me, both of us. There we go. That's it. Let's wrap it up.
Death threats always go a long way. Clearly, I mean, we're not betting real money on any of these things.
Monday morning, over an hour. There we go.
All right.
Boom.
On that note, best of luck to all of you, our loyal listeners. We appreciate the perseverance throughout what has been a trying NFL season and want to see all of you guys and girls get to the window on Monday Night Football. So with a Devon Valley receiving yards ticket over the posted total, we'll see you at the window.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Bet the Board. Make sure you follow Todd and Payne on X. Todd is at Todd Fuhrman. That's TODDFUHRMAN. And Payne is at Payne Insider. That's PAYNEINSIDER. Don't forget, our weekly newsletter comes with an additional best bet. Have that delivered to your inbox by clicking the link atop the podcast show notes. And most importantly, subscribe and download Bet the Board. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Wondery, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and all your other major platforms.